The Flesh Eater Courts are getting some updated rules. Let's see what's coming up in the upcoming Battle Tome. As we know, the Flesh Eater Courts are the last faction in 3rd edition to get an updated Battle Tome, having waited since 2017 or 16 of the previous edition in order to receive their 2nd edition Battle Tome. There's some interesting hints as to what's on its way inside this book, as well as it may also show some of the room they've created in design space for the different factions. To recap the old abilities that are currently in the current Battle Tome that the Flesh Eater Courts use, there is Deathless Courtiers. That is the 6-up Feel No Pain or ward that is given to the entire army. It actually is still technically written in the book as wholly within a hero. However, that was changed in a battle scroll to make it so the entire army just gained the benefit of a 6-up Feel No Pain. There's also the Grand Courts, the big four of the Morngaunt, the Hollow Morn, the Blisterskin, and the Gristlegore Courts, all specializing in the different aspects of the different courts, each of which really focused and all had their unique artifacts and command abilities that have since been phased out of a lot of 3rd edition stuff. In addition, there was the Courts of Delusion. Courts of Delusion was an optional way to pick a Grand Court, essentially by picking a universal rule that would affect the army, foregoing the benefits of having picked a Grand Court. The last actual battle trait was Feeding Frenzy. It was a command trait that was used in the battle to allow a unit to fight again immediately after having fought previously. They could only do this within range of a hero. However, the single target damage from this ability was absolutely bonkers, and it forced the Flesh Eater Courts to be one of the hungriest command point factions in the entire game. There's also a short mention of mustering, since a lot of the units, specifically the courtiers, actually used that mechanic. However, it did not actually stand out as its own battle trait. Starting with the new Noble Deeds. New trait here that slowly built a resource on heroes. Each time a friendly Flesh Eater Courts heroes casts a spell, they'll get 1 deed point. If they get a prayer, which we know we're getting a new priest in the upcoming edition, we'll get a deed point. Every point of damage allocated to an enemy unit gives a point, and there's a cap of 6. This is a brand new mechanic that's added to the courts. It specializes on the heroes. Now, of course, the heroes, being the knights and paladins and kings of the realm, really stand out as the forefront of the faction, but damage seems to be the main way to build it. Even if you have a 2-cast or 3-cast wizard, you're only going to be able to do about 3 of them, and assuming Flesh Eater Courts heroes get the standard damage buff that a lot of factions have been getting in the 2nd into 3rd edition books, doing at least 6 wounds will be pretty easy to do. Command traits and subfactions likely also help acquire more of these points. There's a lot of design room actually inside these where you might be able to see different faction sub-abilities where they're focused on giving out extra D points to try and rank these guys up a little faster. They are flexible resource, however. It's not just something that you accrue and then hold on to. Feeding Frenzy is a battle trait. That is completely different. It's the first to fall, as I put here. It is now add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Flesh Eater Courts model units while they are wholly within 12 of any friendly heroes that have 6 noble deed points. This is a drastic change to Feeding Frenzy. Admittedly, Feeding Frenzy was a feels bad moment, especially on a buffed up Terrorgeist or unit of horrors that was swinging into a single target. However, this actually has some interesting benefits. The first is add 1 to the attacks characteristics of the melee is interesting because it doesn't necessarily say it can't stack. But because of the wording of the actual ability, it will only ever trigger once. So you're only ever going to get +1 attack on the units. Now, units is nice because it doesn't include mounts, and as of right now, using the previous knowledge that we have of things like Terrorgeists, having +1 attack on a Terrorgeist, always a good thing. So that still currently benefits. 6 points shouldn't be hard in a round of combat, affecting the big boys. But the main thing is that it's done by the actual general and not the bats. So, for example, bat riders are going to have a hard time actually triggering this power. It can be earned mid-combat, so if you swing first with a hero, you'll be unlocking potential for the smaller guys following it to be able to use it. But that's a weird dance, as it may not be your best unit activating first if you want to try and unlock the Feeding Frenzy. Wholly within 12 inches is a classic death move. They need the heroes up front so they can be easily targetable and challenged if they're going to buff their units. The next battle trait to talk about is Muster Guard. Muster Guard is what the old courtiers had directly. It does also mention courtiers for a word. Reading it word for word, at the end of your movement phase, each friendly courtier can spend one of their noble deed points to return one slain model to a friendly serfs unit wholly within 10, or 2 deed points to return one friendly knight's model within 10, wholly within 10. You can use this ability multiple times each turn as long as required noble deed points are available. This is interesting because this is a dramatic decrease in recursion that the Flesh Eater Courts currently have. Currently, the ability is for Serf models, roll 6 dice, every 2 up is a model returned in the hero phase. And the Knights, the Cryptors and Crypt Flayers, their abilities are on roll 6 dice, on 5 ups you get them back. Now 2 deed points for a Knight isn't necessarily bad, it's 2 points for a wound. You could for 4 wounds, you'll be able to get actually your models back pretty efficiently. However, 1 point per serf is actually kind of interestingly bad. It's also wholly within 10, which is even closer to friendly models. So they're going to be right on top of each other in order to get these bonuses. You also have to be careful because you'll be giving up your +1 attack aura, as this is at the end of the movement phase in order to do this. So you may be giving up your attack aura in order to bring back 1 ghoul or 1 knight. +1 attack over 30 models, or 1 ghoul back, especially with how Boundless Ferocity has changed in the upcoming book, doesn't necessarily seem to be the greatest way to bring guys back. But again, that's assuming that courtiers don't have an innate way to generate more deed points. So it's something interesting to think about. While they were talking about that, they mentioned the Abhorrence returning whole Serf or Knight units. This sounds like it's a reference to the summoning abilities that the Aberrant Ghoul King and Aberrant Archregent currently already have. As it currently stands, at the end of the movement phase, they can spend a command point to add a new unit to the battle roster. Depending on which kind of Ghoul King or Aberrant Archregent it is, determined what kind of ability it could bring in. And on the throne, it was free. However, they specifically mentioned them bringing back destroyed units. So there's a potential that the Flesh Eater Courts no longer have the ability to outpoint their opponent and are overcosted per point, but more likely they're able to bring back their models at an easier rate with the kings, which falls in line with the thematics. It could be much closer to the Soulblight Gravelords, who re-add dead units at half strength. We already have that in the updated Morgaunt rules. I would expect to see more of that as we go forward. The next battle trait they added is actually really interesting. So it's Courts of Delusion again. Courts of Delusion previously included other courts, but right now it is in the first round of battle, after the players have received their starting command points, but before the start of the first turn, you can pick one of the following delusions to apply during the battle. Crusading Army, which is +1 to run and charge rolls for the Flesh Eater Courts units, or Defenders of the Realm. Add 1 to save rolls for friendly Flesh Eater Courts units while they are contesting an objective that you control. That's interesting for a couple of reasons. Courts of Delusions had Crusading Army and Defenders of the Realm before. They also used to have Royal Hunt, Feast Day, Matter of Honor, and Grand Tournament. From the looks of it, those are not options that will be usable, but these were also options that were chosen instead of picking a Grand Court. That's interesting because this is another buff that a player gets to make at the start of the game that they'll decide what they're going to do. +1 to run and +1 to charge rules is really nice. There's a decent bit of outflank and deep strike that occurs on the army, as we currently understand it. So having the ability to get +1 to charge from a deep strike is always really nice, especially depending on how you're playing your army. Defenders of the Realm, though, is a phenomenal ability. +1 to save rolls while you're contesting an objective you control. Our army, being the Flesh Eater Courts, is generally pretty fast, and being able to get to an objective first, and being a death army, sometimes you might be forced into the not exactly warlord or battle regiment standard. +1 to save rolls for holding an objective is pretty good. You obviously lose out on the mobility that +1 run and +1 charge can give you, but our units in the Flesh Eater Courts army aren't actually that sturdy to start. They could be getting an increase in durability in the update, but even without that, +1 to save is +1 to save, as we see with things like Swords Warriors. Much loved ability that can be used there. It used to be, just for historical fact, Crusading army was always +1 to run, +1 to charge. Defenders of the Realm used to be, while in your territory, re-roll save rolls of 1 on your saves. Comically bad, but I'm happy to see it's better. It's also in addition to, presumably, the Grand Courts, which are not mentioned in this article, but it's just another tactical flexibility option that you can choose per game, which is really nice. Something that's noticeably missing is the actual mention of Deathless Courtiers. Now, I won't go too deep into this just because, but it would be kind of impressive if the Flesh Eater Courts were the first death faction to not have a 6-up Feeling of Pain. They already are a pretty glass cannon army, with the ability to recur if they are not fully deleted. However, just because it's not mentioned doesn't mean that it will not exist. It also could exist in some of the abilities that heroes or courtiers give out. Just something worth noting, just looking through this for the first time. But all in all, those are a look through of all the new battle traits that we have coming up on the Flesh Eater Courts 3rd edition tome. Just want to say thank you very much for watching. Check out the House of AOS Discord. It's a nice little community we've built for the AOS people to talk and just share the hobby love for AOS proper. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to ask them down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.